same story. Chased back from whirlwind flights to Toronto's Expo and neon nights. Glossy faces from the past, hopes in plastic that forever last. Trading dreams while sipping brew, searching for that card is cool. Top shelf cookie sniper calling the tune. Crack the wax neath the glowing moon. Chasing legends while the vibes consume. Welcome to the hockey card typhoon.
Welcome, each and every one of you, to episode number 96 of the Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Hockey Card Podcast, returning from the Toronto Sports Card Expo. That's right, I'm recording this episode on Sunday, April 27th. I was just recently at the Expo, and I'm going to get into that and go over my overall experience. I'm a little bit tired, but the show must go on, so we will go on. Before we get into our episode, we're just going to quickly go over what's been happening in the NHL playoffs so far. Then we'll get into the Expo, my overall thoughts of it, some pickups that I made, as well as some other thoughts as far as maybe some things I would like the Expo to consider improving on. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit on the shorter side. We have been doing longer episodes, as you've noticed, but today's going to be a quick one because I'm a little tired. Also, the NHL playoffs are ongoing as I speak, and I really want to get done so I can go watch the games. Before we get into our episode, let's take care of a little business about being financially responsible and how listening to someone like myself or other people on the internet when it comes to your money might not be the best decision.
This is not advice, let me make it clear. Don't put your savings in a risky gear. Laugh along while you crunch your dough, 'cause I'm rich in puns and it's all for show.
And there was our fun, educational little jingle about how you need to be responsible with your money. Really kind of do your own research to make your own decisions rather than just listening to people on the internet. Obviously, you could take in a lot of information that we all put out there, but at the end of the day, you need to make a wise decision as far as how you spend your money. All these informational songs that I put on here about, not spending your money or listening to other people, how they spend their money, kind of reminds me of the old Schoolhouse Rock songs I used to listen to on Saturdays as a kid. There was a little thing called Schoolhouse Rock. If you're not old enough to remember it, basically it was just a bunch of cartoons that would sing songs about how a bill was passed in government or some other things like conjunction junction, what's your function? I don't know, that's just taking me back. If you haven't heard these songs, go on YouTube, check out Schoolhouse Rock. You will be entertained. Now we're going to move on and we're going to take a look at what's been going on in the NHL playoffs so far as of, again, the recording of this show on April 27th. So let's kick it off with the Western Conference, starting off with the Winnipeg Jets against the St. Louis Blues. Now, right now, that series sits at Winnipeg leads 2-1, but the Blues have been very impressive. I thought this was kind of going to be an easy series. I did have in the back of my mind, as I mentioned in previous episodes, that the Blues are a good team. My question was, can the coach, Jim Montgomery, get them to play where they need to beat the Jets? It looks like they're kind of giving the Jets all they can handle. So I'm very curious to see as far as Game 4, which is about to start as I'm recording this, goes on today. Can the Blues tie up the series and make it a really interesting one, or do the Jets take a commanding 3-1 lead after today? Well, we'll just have to tune in to find out, and that's what we're going to do later on. Moving on to the Avalanche against the Stars. This has by far been one of the best series I've been watching. I've watched every game. So far, the series is tied 2-2, and that's after Colorado shut out Dallas 4-0. A big kind of news event that happened in that series is Gabriel Landeskog has returned. So welcome back, Gabriel Landeskog. He's been gone since 2022 with a devastating injury, and it took him a long time to get back. But not only does he come back for the playoffs, he has actually scored a goal in that playoff game. And again, this is the first goal he's scored since 2022. So the series is tied 2 games to 2. Every game has been exciting for the most part. I mean, I know there was a shutout, but still, Colorado looked great in that game. But in the game before that, Dallas looked great. I think we can kind of maybe see this one go in 7 games. And as I mentioned before, I believe the Stanley Cup winner is one of these 2 teams. I think the big concern I had as far as the Avalanche was I knew they had enough firepower offensively, but defense and goaltending was kind of my main thought as far as my concern. And after a shutout, well, maybe those concerns are starting to dwindle. Now, Jake Ottinger kind of has been a little sloppy in net, as has the Dallas Stars as a whole. Jason Robertson, still out. Man, what is that lower body injury that he's dealing with? They definitely need him back to really kind of move forward. But again, this has just been a great series between these 2 teams. So if you haven't checked out the Avalanche against the Stars, definitely check out the remaining games because I think this one is going to go 7 games. And as I said, one of those 2 teams, I believe, is going to win the Stanley Cup. Now, the Los Angeles Kings and the Edmonton Oilers have played 3 games so far, and the Kings lead the series 2 games to 1. Now, Edmonton's looking to even things up again tonight as of the recording of this show. They were down 2 games to none, came back with an impressive win in the last game. It looks like they're starting to figure out as far as, again, their offensive firepower. McDavid looked unbelievable. I mean, Evan Bouchard kicked in a goal. They just really came together in that last game. But on top of that, the Kings have been just playing solid every time. I guess you could say every series, there's going to be games that you lose. That's 1 game. You got to win 4 of them if you don't already know that. I think the Kings are well on their way to beating Edmonton. I'm going to say that the Kings are going to win this 4 games to 2. I just don't think Edmonton has it all together. Too many little flaws, too many holes that the Kings are capitalizing on every game so far this series, other than the 3rd game. But we're going to find out because that series is on, or that game is on later on tonight. Now, the final series going on in the Western Conference that has been nothing but entertaining is the Golden Knights against the Minnesota Wild. Many people didn't think that the Wild would come out and really give the Knights any kind of series. They thought, hey, look, the Knights can shut down Kaprizov. Who else is going to step up? There's been a lot of people that have been stepping up for Minnesota. Kaprizov's been playing amazing. Boldy's been playing well as other people's like Marco Rossi, Brock Faber. They've been playing exceptional, and it shows because right now that series is tied 2 games apiece. It's tied 2 games apiece because Vegas won the last game in an exciting overtime win, winning 4-3 thanks to Ivan Barbashev's clutch goal in overtime. It's been an entertaining series. The Wild have shown me something that they're really here to play, and they may have what it takes to kind of get to the next round. One of the questions was in the goaltending, but I'll tell you, Gustafsson looks amazing. He looks like he could be a top goalie moving forwards, definitely next year, where he could be in contention for awards and really place the Wild top of their division and really help them not only this year, but definitely next year when I think if they add a couple of more pieces, this team will be a very well rounded team in the Minnesota Wild. Now, not kind of discouraging against the Golden Knights winning this series, but I think that when it comes right down to it, this one's too tough for me to call. Both teams look good on one night and then kind of stumble a little bit on the next night. So, again, you just got to kind of watch every single playoff series because you just don't know what kind of game you're going to get from game to game. Now, moving on to the Eastern Conference, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Florida Panthers. Boy, oh boy, this one's turning out to be quite a series. Now, the Panthers do lead the series 2 games to 1, but Tampa secured their first win the other night with a dominant 5-1 victory. If you haven't seen, there's been some nasty hitting going on. Brandon Hagel was suspended for a game because of his hit on Barkov. Now, it was, I guess you could say, on the edge. It did knock him out for a while, but did he deserve the full game? I don't know. I'll leave that up to the public. What do you think? Should he have been suspended for that one game? But either way, Florida and Tampa is going to be a great series. Florida came out the first two games, kind of felt like they were going to run away with it. But Tampa responded with a 5-1 victory, as we mentioned, and they definitely have the team that can come back and make this a series. Moving on, the Washington Capitals and the Montreal Canadiens series is ongoing, with Washington leading 2-1. Washington jumped out to a 2-0 lead in the series, but Montreal responded with a nice 6-3 win in game 3. I do believe that for Montreal to really win this series, guys like Suzuki and Caulfield, I mean, Patrick Laine, where are you? You need to step up. Lane Hudson, you got to make this a series. Sam Montembeault might be injured. We shall see. I mean, they had to actually bring in their backup emergency reserve goalie to sit on the bench just in case because Montembeault had to leave the game. Really need him to come back, I really think, for Montreal to win this series or even have a chance of winning this series. Hopefully, he's okay for game number 4. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes and the New Jersey Devils are currently at Carolina leading 2-1. Now, again, Carolina jumped out to a 2-0 lead, but the New Jersey Devils were able to scrape out a win in game 3 in a double overtime victory to stay in the fight. So the series is Carolina 2-1. I thought this was going to be a sweep. I was surprised that the Devils had it in them to kind of come back in that overtime series, or in that overtime game, I should say. But I think the handwriting's on the wall. Carolina just looks too deep. And as we mentioned, the Devils just have too many question marks, too many injuries. The big injury being Jack Hughes, of course. I just don't see them moving on. But it was a nice win for them in that double overtime victory. Now, the final series in the Eastern Conference is the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Ottawa Senators. This one was heartbreaking. The Leafs jumped out to a 3-0 lead as far as the series goes. And to be honest with you, in game 3, I thought Ottawa had it, but they let it slip away. Now, Ottawa did avoid elimination with an overtime win in game 4 last night. So it's 3-1. Now, as we know, there's only been 4 teams that have come back from a 3-0 deficit in NHL history to win a series. Can the Ottawa Senators do it? Possibly, maybe, we shall see. So there you have it. There's a quick wrap up as far as the NHL playoffs are going. We will get more in depth in the next episode when I have a little more time to kind of break down each game a little bit further. But as far as my overall thoughts, most of these games have been tremendously entertaining. I've been watching the Senators play against the Maple Leafs. I've been watching the Blues Winnipeg series just so closely. But the big series for me was the Avalanche Stars, and it's not disappointing, especially with the series tied at 2-2. If you haven't already done so, you should be watching the NHL playoffs. I don't know why you're not, especially if you're into hockey cards. You want to see what cards maybe you should be selling or buying right now based off of the players, then how they're doing. That's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. We will get back into our card discussion as far as, hey, it's playoff time. Which cards are selling for higher prices than the beginning of the season? Which ones are suffering because of their play? And which ones are people looking for in general as the playoffs and as the Stanley Cup comes to a conclusion in the next couple of weeks? So definitely tune in to episode number 97, the Connor McDavid episode, and we'll go over some of those cards and what they've been doing as the playoffs have been ongoing. So, just in case you are living under a rock, or maybe you just returned from SpaceX, with Katy Perry and all those other celebrities, and you weren't quite aware that the Toronto Sports Card Expo just recently happened this past week, I'm here to let you know that it did, and it was wonderful. And I'm going to give you my little synopsis as far as a wrap up when it comes to what my experience was with this Sports Card Expo in 2025. Now, as you know, the expo happened this past week from Thursday until Sunday. I went this year and I was there on Thursday and Friday only. Usually when I go Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I did have to get back for something in my personal life for Saturday. so I couldn't make it all 3 days. So the plan was to go up on Thursday, go to the Thursday show, and then go to Friday and then come back on Saturday. So the first, I guess you could say, concern or worry was the travel end, as far as what kind of difficulties was I going to run into when I got to the border, as far as with all this new stuff that's kind of going on. Well, I'm here to say that once I got to the border going into Canada, it was seamless. They basically asked a couple of questions, which they typically do. I told them I was going to the expo. And the funny thing is, the gentleman who was there, this is the border guard, started talking about some of his hockey cards. So that was a good sign for me when I got to the border. We had a quick little discussion and I went right through. Now, as I've talked about in the past, travel throughout Canada is pretty easy. The people there are wonderful as a whole. So that wasn't a concern. I will say this though, if you've never been before, the Toronto Sports Card Expo, for the most part, is held right near the airport, the YYZ airport. Again, you Rush fans should know what that means. But it's also surrounded by a lot of industrial areas. Travel around those areas is not difficult, but when there's a lot of traffic, especially during the rush hours, it takes a long time to get to certain spots. Give you an example. My hotel was only about 5 minute drive away from the expo center. Now I only bring this up because when rush hour came about, so when I left on Thursday or Friday night to get back to my hotel, it was sometimes during rush hour between that, 5 to 6 p.m. time slot. Well, you're getting everybody coming home at once. There's a lot of tractor trailers that are traveling on that road. There's a lot of people waiting on buses. There's buses that stop, which also kind of holds up traffic. People crossing. So that's upsetting the flow. So that was just kind of one of the things that I just, again, wanted people to know in case you're thinking about next year is that there is a lot of traffic at certain times during the day to and from the expo center, but it's mainly during the rush hour times. Okay, that's that. As I mentioned, I went on Thursday and Friday. So let me give you my overall experience as far as how it went. Thursday, I showed up to the Expo Center, walked right into and bought my tickets for Thursday, and walked right into the event around 4:15. Now, the Thursday show runs from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's kind of their soft opening, kind of get everything going, their VIP access, whatever they call it. The nice thing about Thursday is there's hardly anybody there. Makes it very easy to walk around, to see everything, as I've mentioned in the past, and that's exactly what I did. I spent Thursday essentially walking around and kind of checking things out. But the first thing I did as soon as I walked through the door is I went over to GPS Sports Cards booth. Now, the beautiful thing about this booth is Grant has a ton of cards. He's always looking to buy. So I went there with, I'd say, I think it was a half dozen cards that I just kind of wanted to move on from. Grant and I talked right away. I think, the third person that he dealt with that day, may have been a few more, but he was very pleasant to deal with. He looked at all my cards, he got some comps, he basically came up with a value, and we were able to work out a deal in the sense that I was looking for, as I mentioned at the last episode, I was looking for a Crosby auto. Well, who better to go to than the guy who PCs Crosby and has a ton of nice Crosby autos or patch autos in his collection, as well as ones for sale. So, what we did was we worked out a deal where I gave him 5 cards, 6 cards, and he gave me Sidney Crosby patch auto that I will be going over at the end as far as the pickups. He also threw in some cash on top of it. But like I said, I'm going to go over that at the end. So I did that. I got the Crosby card that I wanted right out the gate. The rest of Thursday, I was able to just walk around. And here's the other great part of the expo. As soon as that deal was complete, I crossed producer Louie's path from the Gong Show, and we had a great conversation with himself and one of his friends that he was hanging out with, who I forget his name, and I apologize. And if he's listening to this podcast, definitely yell at me on Instagram because I just can't remember your name. Or Louie, same thing, just let me know. But we had a really great conversation about cards as far as our travel there, what we're looking for, what we've seen already, We sat down, I'd say easily for 15 to 20 minutes. We were able to catch up as far as our shows are concerned, what we got coming up in the near future, as well as just talking about hockey and hockey cards. That is definitely one of the best things about this expo too is the people. You're going to catch up with a lot of hobby friends and you're going to make some really new connections, new friends, and you're going to have some great conversations. And Thursday started out that way. Now, as I mentioned, because there was so few people there on Thursday, in that 3 hour time span, I was able to basically walk through the entire expo floor and see kind of where everything was located. I got to see everyone's displays and got a good idea as far as where a lot of the cards that I might be purchasing are located. Made some, mental notes and then kept going. Now, the end of Thursday came, and I didn't pick up any other cards as far as buying them, but I did buy some boxes. Now, as you know, there's the redemption program as far as the different boxes you can buy from Upper Deck, and they'll give you the Expo packs. If you buy a box of 24, 25 Series 2, you bring it over to the Upper Deck booth. They give you a pack, and these packs are specific to the Expo with some pretty cool cards in there. So I did pick up 3 boxes of Upper Deck Series 2 24-25. So that pretty much ended my Thursday. I left there, like I said, went back to my hotel and proceeded to rip boxes. I did pull some interesting cards, but again, I'm going to go over these at the end. But before we move on, we're talking about cards. Now, as you know, the main sponsor of this show is My Card Post. So let's listen to a quick jingle from My Card Post as far as why you should be checking them out and why they're such a great website.
Use my card, post it's the best. Trade your cards, put it to the test. No seller fees, just cards galore. A wonderland you can't ignore.
And there's our jingle for My Card Post. As you know, I love My Card Post. Best place to go buy, sell, and trade on the internet. If you haven't checked it out, definitely go check out My Card Post. And for under $10 a month subscription fee, you get to keep all of your seller fees, not like some of the other big platforms out there. So check that out. You're going to save some money, and that's sound financial advice. Okay, now back into our episode. So moving forward now till Friday, Friday was my big day. Friday's event went from 11 o'clock to, I believe it was 7 or 8 o'clock. I can't remember exactly. Well, I got there at quarter of 11 and there was already a line. Now, fortunately, I had purchased my tickets in advance and I was able to kind of scoot past the line because the biggest line was people waiting for tickets, which I couldn't believe. Usually it's the other way around, but for some reason, there was a lot more people waiting to buy tickets that didn't already have tickets. So once I got in, it wasn't quite packed like, on a Saturday, but there was more people there than on Thursday. So now it's a little bit harder to move around on a Friday, especially as the day wore on. But we battled on. We went to every single booth and I was looking for cards. And here's basically now the problem of my trip. As I mentioned on the other last episode, I did have this specific card. I was looking for a Crosby auto, and I purchased that as soon as I walked through the door. Now my plan was I'm going to buy a card or cards that it needs to grab me. It needs to wow me. It has to have that wow factor, and it needs to be in a price point that I was comfortable with. Well, I searched for that card. I came across a ton of those cards, but at the end of the day, I only pulled the trigger on a couple. And I'm going to tell you why. When you go to the show in the springtime, especially when it's the NHL playoffs, the vendors up there understand the fact that this is kind of their last hurrah and the playoffs kind of drive our market. So now a lot of people are buying. So there was a lot of price points that I thought were, to be honest with you, a little too high. Now, also on top of that, when I would find a card that I thought was maybe a little too high, but I was interested in, I would start negotiating. And I found that for some reason on Friday, negotiations didn't go like they typically did. A lot of people didn't want to move off specific numbers. There were some people that didn't want to move off them at all. I mean, I'm thinking that's because, again, the playoff push. Some of these players, like for instance, I was looking at Austin Matthews. Well, Austin Matthews in a Toronto Sports Card Expo, and he's in the playoffs right now. Well, they're going to demand premium dollar. Same thing with guys like McDavid or Drysaitel or anybody who's in the playoffs right now. Make matters worse, I was also looking for, say, cool David Pastrnak cards. But as you may or may not know, Pastrnak does not sign a lot of stuff. And everything I saw, I already have a copy of. I didn't buy any Pastrnak cards because I couldn't find anything different that was in my price point. Again, there was some that I thought were really nice cards, but they were vastly overvalued, and the people didn't want to come off those values again because they knew of the rarity that he doesn't sign too often. So I continued on and I kept looking and I kept looking. And to sum up Friday, and I guess you could say in a nutshell, I basically walked the floor and looked at every booth. I think it was 2 to 3 times. And I tried to come up with a card, that I could purchase. I went to even GPS Grant's booth again, and he had a number of cards, but I just couldn't seem to get myself to come up with the value that I was comfortable with on the cards that I liked. So I just kept looking. So to summarize my Friday experience, I did pick up a couple of cards that we'll go over, but I didn't really pick up that much this year. As I look at the pile of cards in front of me, I only had three purchased cards from the event. Now I did get some cards from boxes that I ripped, and I'll highlight them very shortly. Thursday and Friday, and this show as a whole for me was kind of weird. For some reason, I just couldn't pull the trigger on some of the cards that I liked, and I'll give you a great example. Now, I came across a card that I think might be my new grail card, and to describe it on an audio podcast, I'll try to do my best. I'm not sure the year or what set it's from, but basically, it's a card with Bobby Orr, and it's the picture of him scoring the goal. Now, if you don't know what that is, Google it, you'll see the picture. And for all you other hockey fans out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about, the flying oar, the goal, whatever you want to call it. There's a card that pictures that or has that on the card. And to top it off, it's autographed and it's a 1 of 1. Now, I've seen this card before at other booths, so it's been moving around. Just to give you an idea what they were asking for it, they were asking 5,000 Canadian for it. Now, if I was going to purchase this card, basically that was my whole budget and a little bit more than I wanted to spend. Now, I did try to negotiate with the gentleman who was very nice about it, but at the end of it, he didn't want to come off that value where I needed it to be. So I had to let it go. That was a tough one for me to let go, but that's kind of how both days went for me. I just had a tough time justifying some of the values in my mind, so I let some of the stuff go that maybe in years past I would have overspent for. I was really trying to be more financially responsible to the show. I think I did that, but at the same time, I'm disappointed because when you don't come home with a lot of hockey cards from that show, it feels like a loss. But there will be other shows. Now, one of the things that I was very interested in seeing and I saw a lot of was the fact that the Pokemon market at that show grew, I'd say, 1 to 2 times from shows in the past. In other shows of years past, they would be in a corner in a different room, and there'd be, let's say, 15 to 20 booths that would have, all Pokemon. Not only did the amount of booths grow as far as, from that 15 to 20, they had a vast number of booths in the section where majority of the Pokemon cards were. But what I really noticed was as you walk through the whole floor, every, I guess you could say, table, I'd say majority of them, not the old school guys, but, more modern people that had more modern cards, had Pokemon mixed in with their other sports cards. If it was football, baseball, or hockey, which is the big, big, big draw at the Toronto Sports Card Expo. So, for those of you out there who are thinking this Pokemon market is just a flash in the pan and it's going to go away pretty soon, Based off of everything I saw at the expo, I think it's a healthy market, and I think that pretty soon we're all going to take notice of it. I know I have. I've been dabbling in it. I'm having fun playing around in the market, but I don't know half of the stuff that I need to know, and I need to educate myself better on it. So that was something I really picked up on. Another thing that I loved was the amount of people they had coming to sign was outstanding. Guys like Eric Lindros, RJ Barrett was there. On top of there was just a number of legends from the past and other different sports, wrestling, there was basketball, there was baseball. They had a lot of great signings up there. Now, one of the big draws, if you've ever been to the Sports Card Expo, is Marcel Dion. That's right. Marcel Dion, the great king of the past, is actually, he always sets up a booth there, and I actually got a chance to talk with him. And he was quite enjoyable to talk with. He told me some great stories about his playing past, as well as some different stories with the future, how he was able to adjust once hockey was done, why he loves coming to the expo. He just loves being around hockey. Now, here's the nice part about our conversation that we had. I mentioned to him that I had a little tiny hole in the wall podcast about hockey cards. And guess what? He told me to send him an email. And if he has the time, he'd love to come on and have a quick chat as far as hockey cards and the expo and what have you. This is Marcel Dion, NHL legend, that's agreeing to come on this little podcast. Wow, that was just something for me. So that was really a highlight for me. On top of that, I got to watch some great content as far as the different stages they had. One day they had some influencers up there. Jeremy Lee was there, Coach Co was there, Josh from the Gong Show was up there, and they were just talking about how they navigate through this whole world of, being an influencer or media or YouTube channel, building up their brand, what have you. Very interesting conversation. Then they had a number of interviews where different people were interviewing different players. Again, Josh from the Gong Show got to do an interview along with Jeremy Lee. Definitely check out these interviews and who they interviewed either on their channels or on YouTube. So, as a whole, the expo was wonderful again. Now, aside from my own little issues, it was a great expo. Now, with that being said, there is one thing I would like or I would hope that the expo could kind of make a little bit better, and it's simply this. Entering the show sometimes can be difficult because the lines that if you're buying tickets or if you have tickets and you're going, I think that's their issue. The way they have it set up is when you walk in, they have two areas. They have the ticket booth for people who are buying tickets, and then they have a table where they have, let's say, a half a dozen, 6 to 8 people give you your wristbands. The problem is if you didn't buy tickets, the booth was smaller than in years past. Usually the booth has, I'd say, 4 people kind of in it, moving things along. On Thursday, there was one person. So that line built up pretty quickly. Very nice though, don't get me wrong, but one person, yeah, that's a little thin. Then on top of it, the table where you get your wristbands on Thursday, there was only 4 people there. So that caused the line too. Friday was even a bigger problem. They only had 2 people in the ticket booths when I got there at 11 o'clock, and that line was already starting to wrap around the building. Now, again, because I pre purchased, I was able to sidestep that, which is usually the opposite, as I mentioned in the previous episode. But for some reason, pre purchases was getting a lot quicker than if you needed to buy them. Well, when you got inside, they did increase the number on Friday. There was about, I'd say, 7 or 8 people, and they had someone directing it. But again, they need to add more people at the ticket booths and at the table to get us into the show quicker. I did talk to a couple of people who basically waited in line a little later in the day, over 40 minutes to get into the show. I think in 2025, they really need to revisit that and come up with a better way so that people can get into the show quicker and they're not just hanging out outside, especially if it's a cold or cool day or it's a rainy day. Last thing you want to do is stand in a long line waiting to get to a ticket booth with 1 or 2 people waiting to help you in there. That's probably the biggest negative thing that I have. Everything else about the show is great. The layout was great, how they had it situated. It was very easy to find things where you needed to be, where the signings were, where the grading booths were, where the Pokemon section was, anything. Very easy to find. When the events would happen, they would make announcements so you knew exactly what was going on. And again, you could figure out quite quickly how to get there. The people as a whole were wonderful. Canada, thank you so much for being a class act, not only when it comes to the show, but even outside the show. Had nothing but good experiences dealing with people and can't praise you enough for the kindness that not only myself, but others received, especially when from us crossing the border after all the hubbub that you're hearing in the news. We appreciate you treating us with respect, and hopefully we treat you with the same. So there's my overall experience. Like I said, it was a great experience. They could change a couple of things, but that's okay. If that's the worst thing that happens, I could live with that. It's just like I said, in 2025, I think we could do a little bit better job getting into the show quicker than they have, especially this year. Now we've gone over the show and kind of all the hubbub and things that I talked about, my experience and my travels. Now let me talk about the cards that I received or that I picked up at the show. I'm going to start with the fact that, like I said, I didn't buy a lot. So I'm going to start with the boxes. I did buy about 10 boxes of different things. As I talked about before, I bought 3 boxes of 24-25 Series 2. I also bought some OPG Platinum, the Bedard years, and I bought a box of Clear Cut, as well as some Pokemon products. Won't go over the Pokemon cards because, again, this is a hockey card podcast. So, what hockey cards did I get? Well, from the Clear Cut box, as you know, when you buy a Clear Cut, it's a gamble. And boy, did I lose. So the box that I got, it only cost me about $115 Canadian. I got a little bit of a deal because I bought a number of boxes from this individual. And the card I got was a rookie card, but it's of San Jose's Tristan Robbins. Yeah, I know. I don't know who he is either. Tristan Robbins. That's the card I got. So I think we can say that's a loser unless you're a Tristan Robbins collector. When you get the clear cut, you're hoping for bigger name players, Gretzky's, Lemieux, or even more modern day. And I got Tristan Robbins. Again, loss, I guess, overall, but still good experience. Now, when I opened the 24-25 Series 2, out of those 3 boxes, the big highlight was I did get 2 Mitchkov Young Guns cards. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then the third card I got that was interesting was I did get an Austin Matthews Silver Outburst base card. Great looking card. Gonna definitely get it graded. So with the 2 Mitchkovs, that was pretty exciting to pull. Now, with the rest of the cards that came from it, you got the typical Young Guns overall. I got some Silver Outbursts. No big names, any names that I would bring out here. So, out of those 3 boxes, the 2 Mitchkovs and the Austin Matthews Silver Outburst was kind of the highlight of those 3. Now, the next box that I opened was the O-Pee-Chee Platinum. Again, the Connor Bedard year. I'm going to start off with the auto that I got. Wasn't Connor Bedard, it was Ty Cartier. I think I've gotten this guy's autograph, 3 times out of all the OPG Platinum that I've opened over this past year. Now, this is a Violet Pixels. It's numbered out of 99. Cool looking card, just not the player I was looking for. But here's the saving grace. I did pull a Connor Bedard marquee rookie card, and it wasn't a base one, but it's the one where it's got the mountains and the trees. It's the pond hockey version. I'm not quite sure exactly what it's called, but it's a variant and it's one of the more highly sought after ones. So that card really saved that box for me. The value on this thing, it runs somewhere between $200 and $300 US. So at the end of it, I was able to at least break even on that box of OPG Platinum, again, because of the great deal that I got. Okay, so there's the cards that I got from the boxes that I opened. Now, here's the last 2 cards that I purchased. The number 2 card that I purchased was a 2006 Upper Deck Be a Player dual auto of Patrice Bergeron, and Phil Kessel, and it's a PSA 9. Now, when I saw this card, I do have a raw version of this card. I didn't have one in PSA, and come to find out, this card on a PSA 9 has a Pop 1. So for the price that I paid for it, it was under $100 Canadian. I said, how can you not have enough Patrice Bergeron, and Hot Dog Phil Kessel autographs in your collection? So that was the card that I purchased. As I mentioned, the dual signatures of Bergeron and Kessel in PSA 9 format for under $100 Canadian. Now, the last card was the card that I basically worked out a deal with GPS Sports Cards are. Want to say again, thank you to Grant. If you haven't dealt with him, he makes it so easy. So my experience was this. When I went to the table and he came over to see what I had, we talked a little bit about business and the podcast and blah, blah, blah. Now, once we got into it, he went through the cards that I have, and I got to give this guy a lot of credit. He was able to find comps on cards that I couldn't really find, and he found them very quickly. So what he did was he basically took my cards and said, okay, of the, let's say, I think it was 6 or 7, here's the 5 that I'm interested in. And he gave me a value on top of it. Now, I will say that there was a Connor McDavid patch auto out of 10 in there. There was a Mikko Rantanen Future Watch auto. And there was a couple of other cards that I will post on our social media account at Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Podcast. So you can see all these cards, because I think it's better to see them than to just have me explain them on this audio podcast. So he gave me a value for those cards. Now, he did kick out 2 of them. One was in a Lafreniere patch auto, and I can't remember what the second one was. But basically, I said to him, look, why don't you just include those? Give me a price or value that you think is fair, and I just don't want to carry those around with me the rest of the show. He was more than happy to accommodate me, so he came up with a number. Now, the next thing I did is I asked him, I said, look, I'm looking for a Sidney Crosby, preferably patch auto, but I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for. So I asked him his opinion. He went right into his little side stash and he pulled out this card, and this was the card that I knew I was going to buy. What the card is it's a 2007, 2008, The Cup honorable numbers, numbered out of 87. So honorable numbers out of the player's jersey number, Sidney Crosby 87, in case you don't know that. So it's 31 out of 87, and it's a patch auto. Now, the auto is crispy clean, as Sidney Crosby usually is, but the patch was the final, I guess you could say, piece to the puzzle that made me buy it. It's a 3-colored patch on both numbers. You get a lot of white, you get a lot of black patch, but you also get parts of the gold. So it's the home black, white, and gold jerseys, which is one of my favorite jerseys. I would have loved to have gotten that baby blue one, but I didn't see too many of those other than one. I think it was a trilogy, and I wasn't too into it because it was a sticker auto. This is an on-card auto. It looks fantastic. Basically, the deal was is I traded a bunch of cards and Grant threw some cash on top of it for this card. I was more than happy with the deal. He just made it so easy. So if you've never dealt with him, definitely deal with Grant from GPS Sports Cards whenever you get the chance to. He is one of the nicest guys in the hobby, one of the most knowledgeable guys in the hobby, and he has probably one of the best selections as well. Thank you to Grant. Thank you for the deal. Again, I'm going to put all these cards up on our Instagram page at Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Podcast so you can see the cards that I got. So there it is. There's my quick little review of the Toronto Sports Card Expo as far as what I did, my experience, and the cards that I was either able to pick up, whether it was through buying them individually or from ripping boxes. How did your expo go if you went? I'd love to know. Hit me up on the Instagram page, as we said. Let me know what you picked up, what you saw. Did you get what you were looking for? Could you find maybe you didn't find what you were looking for? I just want to know what your experience is so we can have that conversation. Show me your cards as well, too. The cards that I saw up there were mind-blowing. And like I mentioned, maybe next time in the fall when I go back, I'll be coming home with a bigger stack of cards. And there's the siren to end our podcast. So, as you've heard, we had some quick NHL news. We went over the NHL playoffs so far. We'll get more in depth next episode, as well as some cards that I will be looking at to either sell or pick up as the playoffs go on. Then we went into the Toronto Sports Card Expo. Just a quick synopsis as far as my experience, my thoughts, and some of the cards that I was able to walk out of there with. As I mentioned, overall, my experience was wonderful. I just wish I could have pulled the trigger on a few more cards that I felt comfortable with the price point, but again, that's my issue. We will definitely, as we said, put all these cards up on our Instagram page at Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Podcast for you to check out and to leave your comments on. Now, for all of you out there who maybe this is your first time listening, I know I met a lot of nice people at the expo, and this might be the first time you're checking out the podcast. And I just want to say, hey, thank you for either the nice conversation or checking out the podcast. I do apologize for the quickness and kind of the haphazardness of how this episode came together. But as I mentioned, this is kind of a whirlwind week. I got a lot going on with the expo and other things. So this episode is just kind of thrown together, but we'll get back to our regularly scheduled format in the next episode. For those of you who may not know that, we drop a new episode every single Wednesday. And if you want to catch up on previous episodes, definitely check us out on where you get your podcasts or even on YouTube. For those of you who are regular listeners, as always, thank you so much for staying with us. We're getting close to that 100 episode milestone. We got some big things planned, as well as some big announcements that will be coming on that episode. So stay tuned for that. We want to thank everyone who we talked to at the expo, whether it's past hobby acquaintances or new hobby friends that we met at this expo. We hope that we can hear from you on a regular basis, and we hope that you just give us your input, your thoughts on whether it's hockey cards, how we can make this show better, anything you want to talk about. Hit me up on our Instagram page, and we'll have that conversation. So I'm going to end this episode right now because, as I mentioned, the playoff games are starting up on Sunday, and I want to make sure I don't miss a minute of them. So for the Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Hockey Card Podcast, I'm your host, Jay. Apologize for the haphazard episode, but we will see you soon.
Golden helmets, stats aglow, each crease reeks of tales untold. From Gretzky shines to rookies raw, every card breaks the collector's law. Chase blunt tails explode in tracks. He's the myth with paper stacks through this prism, a time machine. Chasing relics of a timeless scene. Top Chef Cookie Sniper, call it